Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Federation's Most Wanted, the Blake 7 podcast, where I, the preacher 711, seek, locate, and interview fans from across the Blake 7 community. And I've got to say, I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while now, because I've got the two guests at once, two writers of the Blake 7 sequel novel, Vindictus. I've got Louella Richardson and Neil Shearer. Hi, guys.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, afternoon. We got a time today.
Yes, Louella's joining us from the US. We've got our first international podcast. How cool is this? How you doing, guys? You all okay?
All good, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I have the day off, so it's President's Day here. So.
Ah, wow. Okay.
Half term here. So
half term.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. I really, really appreciate it. We're going to launch into some questions. I've got a list of questions I'm going to ask you both, and love to hear your thoughts on everything. So here we go. So I'll start off with you, Louella, if I can. How and when did Blake 7 come into your life?
Well, it's not very commonly known here. I got lucky when I was probably about 19 or 20. A local Atlanta TV station started running it right from the beginning. And they had already been running Doctor Who, so I was a big Doctor Who fan. So they were like, oh, it's from the creator of the Daleks. So started watching it, and I immediately just was absolutely addicted to it. I think I liked it because, especially being, 19 or 20, I was kind of a goth chick. And I just loved it. It was so dark, and it was willing to not have happy endings. And the characters, even the ones we were supposed to be rooting for, kind of had their demons and made bad decisions. So yeah, I just absolutely loved it and got to watch it all the way through, and then didn't get to see it again for another several decades because it's very, very hard to track it down here. So
did you guys have the sort of videotape releases over there?
Not well, I would try to track down like DVDs, and they wouldn't play on American DVD players. And I know there's a way around that, but I wasn't tech savvy enough to figure it out. So yeah, I couldn't find it being played anywhere. I couldn't play the DVDs. So I didn't get back into it again till maybe about 4 years ago. And they started showing, I found it on YouTube. Really crappy versions of it, but I mean, they sucked, but I got to watch it. And then finally, just last, maybe year before, they actually finally started showing it on American BritBox. So yeah.
Brilliant. And Neil, what about you, sir? When did Blake 7 come into your life?
Well, when it screened originally, I was just a wee pup. So I was only 5 or 6 when it first came on. So I didn't catch much of it when it first broadcast, but I did catch my one memory when I was a kid was of the Liberator with melted cheese all over it. So I can remember that and the heartbeat sound of Terminal. So that sounds prominent in my head, and I did catch season D or 4 or whatever you want to call it as well. I can remember that because they repeated it, and I was about 7 or 8 by then. So but when I really started watching it, because I never knew who Blake was and never knew he existed from my limited viewing, was when they started to put it back on UK Gold, if you remember.
Yeah, absolutely. That's some great ads for that as well. I remember that.
Yeah. And I can't remember the timeline for that. I've got to be honest. I think I was around about 18, 19, something like that. And a friend of mine, I managed to convince him to record them onto VHS for me. So he did that rather diligently, thankfully, and did all that for me. And that's when it started when I started to really watch the whole thing as a whole piece. So season 1, season 2, season 3, and started to build the whole picture. And that's when I thought, this is quite different to anything else that's around as science fiction. It hasn't got that shiny, glossy, happy ending kind of trait to it.
Brilliant. And Louella, what series are you? What one do you most identify with? Not necessarily your favorite, but just what series?
Yeah, I'd definitely say I have to remember because y'all talk different than I do. I always want to say season 2, but y'all say series B. Right?
Very good.
Yeah,
Yeah, well
no,
done.
yeah, that's my definite favorite. I think it's probably because it's my favorite incarnation of the crew. And they all kind of have their backstories. They're all interesting. And I especially like, I think that's the best of that sort of Avon Blake frenemy dynamic. I love that. I think that's absolutely the best for me Avon ever is when he's kind of needling and pissing off sorry Blake. And I also think Paul Darrow was at his best when he was acting off of Gareth Thomas. I don't know, there's something about those two when they were interacting. But yeah, and I don't know, I just love that dynamic with the crew. I think that's the one I most identify with, and that is absolutely my favorite.
What about you, Neil?
Yeah, it is going to be 2. It is going to be season 2B as well. So for very similar reasons to what Louella has just pointed out, to be honest. But I do think that the dynamics amongst the crew and the whole purpose of the crew and what the crew were doing at the time, it had an arc and it made sense. I do think that at times, particularly perhaps season C3, which I do really love, it didn't tend to have that. It lost a bit of that purpose of why are they there? What are they doing? I think there were times I looked at the crew and thought, well, why are they all on this ship still? Why are they, what's the point? Season D, I think, tried to address that a bit and started to give it a bit more of an arc again of trying to find specialists and getting groups of people together. But B, I think, was peak for me. Blake was there, Avon was his snipey best, Jenna was there, Callie was there as well. Villa was, of course, there. The whole crew was there and had so much stuff, whether it, with Gam dying in the middle and all that kind of stuff, and we build up to the climax of Star 1. So I think it had everything. I think B had everything that you could want.
Good shout, yeah. And Louella, Team Blake or Team Avon? What are you?
If you'd asked me when I was 19, I would have said Team Avon. I liked that sort of Byronic anti-hero. But yeah, and I think it's just as I've gotten older, I definitely say Team Blake now. I think a lot of it as you go through life, like I've known guys, I dated a guy who was basically Avon, didn't look like Paul Darrow, but he had the person. And it's real intriguing at first, and then you just want to smack them one. They're just so yeah, I know. I think definitely now Blake. I mean, he was a better leader. I have a lot more sympathy for him. I'm a teacher, so Blake always reminds me of a teacher who has a really, really obnoxious class that they're trying to get to behave and do what they're supposed to do, and he's just like, what the hell, guys? What the hell? So yeah, no, and I mean, I think Gareth Thomas, he was able to convey that you understood why people followed him, and he had that ability to inspire them, and you believed he could get this group of people to actually put aside their own concerns and actually follow him. So yeah, now I'm older, I'm Team Blake.
Team Blake, okay. Neil?
It is Blake. And it is because of the believability thing, to be honest. I couldn't quite grasp season 3 why they were still all there together. Maybe just survival, I don't know. And then season D, I've got a number of hang-ups with season D, to be honest with you. And one of them more so is the character shift and change of Avon, who suddenly becomes more manic Blake than Avon, in my opinion. So series 3 and 4 or C and D don't really hang together for me. But I just think that it was at its best when you had Blake there and Avon there playing off each other. I think that's when the series had the dynamics right.
Thanks, guys. And then we get on to the great one of the favourite episodes. Not necessarily the best, or give me any reason you want, one that you go to, and it doesn't have to be just one. People always go, I can't give you just one. Don't give me one then. Favourite episode, Louella?
I'm going to be very non-creative and say Star One. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of them I love, but I think with Star One, it's got all those. One, it's the culmination of this really interesting series arc through the whole thing, the search for Star One. And you've got, the usual enemies they're facing. You've got Servalan and Travis and the Federation. But I think what I really loved about it is the introduction of the Andromedans as a threat, where they all of a sudden realize, oh crap, there's something worse out there. And I don't know, I just love, it's got, especially with the Andromedans taking over the bodies, and there's a closet of bodies. It's very horror. And Neil knows I am a massive horror movie fan. So yeah, I love that. And then I think just the ending, the last 5 or so minutes, when it's the Liberator and it's there stuck out in space alone, and they're having to face down the Andromedans and kind of hold the line. And the way it just ends with Avon saying fire just absolutely always gives me goosebumps, no matter how many times I see it. I mean, I have other favorites. I love Redemption because it's, the backstory of the Liberator, and I really like the Altas. So, but yeah, and I'm a weirdo. I also like Sarcophagus because it's weird, and it's again got that kind of horror element about, the unlocked room or the locked room or the mysterious tomb that you shouldn't go into, but you do. So yeah.
Just for fun. So for me, I guess there was a short list, and the short list had Aurak on it, Redemption, Star One, Aftermath, Rumors, Terminal, Gold, Orbit, and Blake. That would be my short list. But I think for me, it depends on mood I'm in. It's going to be as simple as that. But if I had to pull one out of all of that, I think one that is going to bring together all the best elements of the show and science fiction in general, I think I'm going to have to plump for Star One as well. Right. Because I think it's got everything there that you could possibly want in a science fiction show and a Blake 7 show as well, a Blake 7 episode as well. I think all the cast and all the crew are there. The situation's pretty, dramatic. And then, of course, the end is pretty dramatic as well. So I think, yeah, it ticks all the boxes there.
All the boxes. Okay. And then on the flip side of that, guys, least favourite.
Oh.
Where we go, Louella?
Yeah, if you had asked me that about a year ago, I probably would have said Horizon. Not necessarily because it's bad. It's the one thing that even my least favorite Blake 7 episodes aren't. It's boring. I mean, it's basically interviewing people laying on lounge chairs for 45 minutes. It's like, really? Don't do anything here. But now, yeah, after the last 6 months, I'm going to go with The Keeper.
Okay.
And that's because Neil and I wrote a short story for the new Cult Edge anthology. And it was set between The Keeper and Star One. So we kept having to go back, and you always having to check this and that. So The Keeper was already not one of my favorite episodes. And then it was just, we kept having to go back in over and over and over and over. And it was really like, we got to go check that, see what they said in The Keeper. Whose turn is it to watch it? No, I just no. So yeah, it just, I don't know, drilled in my brain everything I did not like about that. So yeah, right now it's The Keeper, because I do not want to go back and have to watch that anytime soon.
Oh, that's brilliant. What about you, Neil?
Well, The Keeper's not high up on any favorite list either, for the same reasons. But I'm going to I'm going to be pretty typical, I think, of normal answers here, and animals is just dreadful. I'm sorry, even for a Blake 7 episode, it just doesn't work on any level, and there's particularly a rather disturbing level with Justin, I think, and I just can't see past that. I always love things to be believable, or as believable as they can be, and there's not much believable about that episode to me, so it's not on any rewatch list of mine. So yeah, that's my least favorite.
And Liberator or Scorpio, guys?
Now I love the Scorpio. I like that it's a little scrappy ship. And it kind of reminds me, it doesn't look like it, but it reminds me a lot of the Rocinante from The Expanse.
Yeah.
It's really sort of repurposed, turned into something it wasn't originally meant to be. And I will say that scene at the opening of Series D, where the Scorpio rises up on the platform and it kind of turns and goes shooting out a xenon base, that is badass. I love that. That's one of the best spaceship sequences ever. But I gotta go with the Liberator. It's just the coolest, most gorgeous ship I think I've ever seen, inside and outside. And I think I love that it's alien tech, and the crew never completely figures out how to work it either. You feel like there's always other things you could find out about the Liberator, and is it gonna, they get in a dangerous situation. Is the Liberator gonna basically tell them, yeah, no, not doing this, so, screw you guys. And it almost becomes its own character. It's like it's sentient. It's another character on the show. So yeah, I mean, I have to be Team Liberator.
Okay, fair enough. And Neil, you, sir?
I mean, I don't want to be typical for the typical. I think Scorpio could have been done a lot better. I really do. I think there was no need for it to be so silver and so shiny and so kind of polished inside. I think that spoiled it a little bit. It would have been much better if it had bits hanging out and looked a bit beaten up. I think, to be honest, I think that's what they were going for. I've got to be honest. But they didn't pull it off properly, in my view. And I liked the whole concept of that rather beaten, battered old ship, making them a bit more vulnerable. So I did Scorpio outside, I liked. Scorpio inside, I just went, look, this doesn't really work for me. It looks like a 1980s office or something like that. So I didn't get it. So it's going to be Liberated, but the reasons for that are that I think it touched on something that has developed since then in science fiction, in that it is all organic, or is meant to be organic. I think a living, sentient kind of being linked to the system, and Zen is very much there as the overseer of that. And I think that it felt alien, didn't it? Even now, it still looks alien, even though the sets might have dated a bit. It still looks pretty bloody good, to be honest, for when it was done. So I just think the whole concept was really, really new, and that's really good. So it's going to be Liberator.
I always like the one thing about the Liberator. This is I'm going to get a bit nerdy now, so forgive me. Is one thing I really liked is just how Zen and the computer system functions is more believable than in most other science fiction. That there's a UI, there's a user interface, which is Zen. It's just an interface point, but that he hands all the tasks off to specialist computers, the navigation computer, the battle computers, and he talks about what they report back to him. And I've always loved that. Just from a computer architecture point of view, there would never be just one thing that does stuff. I think, what a prediction from 1978. Here we go.
He's the boss of the ship, isn't he, Zen?
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
In charge. He's the gaffer.
Absolutely, just runs a thing, but these other guys do all the tasks. And then I also then liked with Series D with Aurak and his whole thing about redesigning Scorpio's engines. Now I'll hand that off to an engineering computer. I don't get my hands dirty in that stuff. Oh yeah, it was just they were really good at their representation.
And then of course Aurak was very snarky to Slave, wasn't he? The inferior computer and that kind of stuff. So
all good.
Yeah, it was
all
good dynamic there. Yeah.
So guys, Travis 1 or Travis 2? What are we saying?
Oh yeah, I got to go with Travis 1. he just was more believable as a threat. And, you obviously got that crazy and that anger and that hatred and obsession with Blake, but it was like he kept it in check, which to me is a lot more dangerous. A crazy person that's kind of got things in control is a lot more frightening than somebody who's just freaking out and screaming all the time. And I mean, to me, it's very analogous to the differences between in Doctor Who, the Delgado Master and the Anthony Ainley Master. It's a little bit more, the Ainley, the Delgado Master, he was crazy, he was obsessed, he had his little plans, but he wasn't sitting there alone in a cave dressed up in a disguise where nobody could see him. I mean, he just wasn't as backcrap crazy. But yeah, I mean, I think Travis 1 is just more menacing, and Travis 2 is just like, oh, just shut up. Just settle down, Beavis. He's just out of control.
Points for the Beavis reference, which I rather enjoyed. Neil, what are you going to say?
I could never buy the flyby explanation that was given that he had some kind of therapy or something, and then all of a sudden he was 3 inches taller, looked completely different, had a big quiff, and had a character, change. I just never bought. I never got it. I just didn't understand why you'd even continue with the character. It didn't make sense to me. Could Servalan could have had another number 2. So it's Travis 1 for me is the answer, and I'm going to go back to the reason of believability again. I could not believe Travis 2. It didn't make any coherent sense to me at all. That doesn't mean to say I don't like the portrayal, but I don't know what the portrayal is of. Because it's not Travis, it's not the same character. How can that be the same character? It doesn't make sense to me. So it's just Travis 1 for me, because he Stephen Greif was such a great actor, I think, and he had that gravitas and he could dominate a screen. So I think that I'd have to go with that. Brilliant.
Okay, so the planet Galda Prime. There's gunfire and bodies everywhere, but did anybody survive? Louella, did they?
Are you asking us that?
Well, I'm asking. Right, we'll talk about the book another time. But just personal, even feeling at the time or feeling now, deep down, what do you say?
Well, obviously, we wrote a 90,000-page book about what we thought happened. But yeah, I mean, my thought was there was no way everyone was going to survive, even when I saw it. Now, I do remember it was one of the first time I saw it, and I knew nothing about it. Again, being American, we hadn't heard anything about it. So just to have it in that way was just like, it was amazing. I loved it. But yeah, I would think Villa, if anyone would survive, I've heard everyone says Villa, but
everybody.
I mean, that was his forte,
Yeah.
getting in a crap show and being the one that comes out alive. And obviously we thought that it was believable that I won't say, but one other person survived. So yeah, there's no way all of them survive. But in the confusion, and given that the Federation troops shoot about as well as Star Wars stormtroopers, so I think you'd be more likely to get killed by friendly fire in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think back to a lifetime ago, showing my youngest child to Blake 7 for the first time, and we did a watch through, and we got to the end, and I thought, I can't wait. That's the bit you wait for. What's the reaction going to be? And we sat there through the credits and all the additional gunfire, and I swear, as soon as it stopped and the music rolled, he went, "Huh, Villa's still alive though." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And he was like, "Oh, come on." He would be faking. And he described, he described this thing to me about the fact that after everybody kind of cleared the room, Villa would sit up, look around, and then lay back down again. So it's a decade later when I did an 8-bit video game. That scene there as a homage to my son is if you go after the end title credits, the 8-bit screen there, you've got the characters laying dead, and Villa sits up, looks around, and lays back down. Because I had to. It's a great memory. But Neil, what do you think?
I can just remember watching it when all my first memories of watching it, and of course Blake is very obviously dead, and then just thinking they don't look very dead, any of them. The gunshots didn't really shoot. There's no gore, there's no blood. They kind of dreamily fall to the floor, for want of a better way of putting it. And of course, Chris Boucher himself, rest in peace, said, he left it open deliberately. So who died? I mean, obviously, as Louella said, we've written our own version of the answer to that. But I think it was just left open, and I was still one of them guys. I was one of them guys that were listening to the gunfire as well.
Yeah.
Going, whose gun's that? Whose gun's that? That's Yvonne's gun in there, I'm sure. So I did a bit of that, but I guess it was always open to imagination and interpretation, and I think probably still is. And I mean, only now, having written the book with Louella, have I formed my own view of who survived. But yeah.
Brilliant. And what's your Blake 7 wish? If you could grant us fans something magical, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to do it kind of from a very American perspective, because again, it's not really well known here. And I think there are loads of people who've never even heard of it who would be huge fans of it here. So I'd love for it to be more accessible here, more available. It is finally on American BritBox, I'd like to think, because I was harassing them about it, emailing them and calling them. I got tired of hearing that from me. But yeah, I'd love it to be available on one of the big platforms like Netflix or Amazon or Hulu. So even casual sci-fi fans could see it and access it. And I think there's potential, there's an untapped fan base here. So I just like more of my fellow countrymen to be able to watch it and enjoy it.
That's a great wish. I love that one. It's brilliant. Neil, what about you?
Make my book.
Okay, I'll jump in on that one.
But in all honesty, that is one that would be a big wish. But lots of people talk about a remake and all of that. I'm not too sure about that. Whether it would be a good or a bad thing, I'm still undecided. You can make or break things with remakes, I think, and taking things in directions that they're not meant to. So I'm not sure about that. They'd have to get that pretty right. I think Battlestar Galactica got it pretty right when they did it. So if it was of that quality and things like that, and remain true to the original concept, then I think I'd be open to that. But aside from that, it would be some form of continuation, I think, would be my big wish. But I think more in the realistic kind of place, just more stuff. Let's get more stuff out there of whatever genre it is, and or whatever media it is, and more creative stuff. I think there's been a little bit of a resurgence recently, and the more kind of audience we can get for the show, the more chance of them other things that I mentioned possibly happening. So yeah, let's just flood as much of it out there as we can.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, guys, for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it. It's been excellent talking to you both. And I hope you'll come back. We've got our spin-off Voice from the Podcast series. I'd love to get you guys on there to talk about the book.
Yeah, we'd love to. Thank you for having us on.
Brilliant. And thanks to everybody out there for liking, subscribing and listening. We'll keep going as long as people listen. So take care, everybody. Goodbye.